Okay, so now that you've learned how to set up Git Pod IO, now let's actually get into the part, and I say Git here in the sense that you're learning Git, but now let's work on how to do the workflow for this class. What you're going to be doing week after week, day after, I don't know, day after day, but you're going to be doing for this class. Okay, so if I click into here now, I will see that there is this workflow. And now what I'm going to do is show you how to do this, because this is the process of getting work, coding, staging. We call this you code, you stage, you commit, and you push. Okay, so let's go back over here. So now, and by the way, notice what's happened since the last time I was here. It took it a few minutes, but I had closed out both my public and my private repos for these accounts, and one of them is now stopped, which is totally normal. Like I said, it does it, and all I have to do to reactivate it is actually to click on the workspace. Remember, there's the workspace URL, and then there's the GitHub URL. And it's okay to look at the GitHub URL, but in here, because you want to work, you want to click on the workspace URL. Okay, let's actually go ahead and do that. And again, this may take a few seconds longer once it's stopped, because it just has to what we call spin up that container, because that's what this is. This is a container that Git Pod is making available to you. And the container is basically like it's your own little computer, but you don't have to buy it. Isn't that great? God, I love the cloud. Okay, here we go. So it defaults into this view for me, and I think it should for you. But if for some reason, I said this before, here's your Explorer, here's where all the files are at. And at this point, and I think this is worth noting, if I go to github.io, CIT93, and because I have the private one open, let's open Brody's private one. The files here, git ignore, and the README file will match what is here, because right now they are the same files, but I'm about to change these files over on the workspace. And then what will happen is once I'm done, okay, they will now then be pushed into the GitHub so you can submit your work, which I'll talk about in week 1. But let's just do a simple change, okay? For now, I'm just going to get rid of this getting started, and I'm just going to open the README file. If you don't know about README files, they're basically, well, README files are basically information about the repo, but the type of file, it's called a markdown file. And there are times in this class where we actually will do markdown files, okay, where we do a little documentation in a file to give it, some, verbiage about what this repo or maybe what this directory within the repo is doing. But for today, let's just do this. And I think if I do this and I say playing with, let's just say playing around, okay, and now I say this git pod, it doesn't really matter what you put here, right? Git pod IO is kind of, do you think it's kind of cool? I actually think it's kind of cool. But here's what's happening. As you're modifying this file, there's a couple things that is happening in the editor. One is over here. There's and it's keeping track. And this is what the cool thing and why we as developers and coders use something like Git. And Git is the piece that actually tracks the changes. And what I'm going to have you do is not necessarily use the interface here for version control right now. As we go through and get further into it, you're welcome to do that. But I think it's good to learn a little command line experience. So what happens now is I have this terminal up. And again, if for some reason you don't have it up, you can always come over here. I just have to find it where if I closed it, where I would get it back at command line. I think that's command palette. Let me just close it if for some reason yours is not showing, so you'll know how to get it back. Okay, so this is the file I have open. I've made changes to it. I know there's changes because it actually changed color. But if I wanted to get that terminal back and I don't see it here, I'd go command palette and I would say terminal. And let's see, can I just do new terminal? Perfect. Active workspace. That's great. Let's actually just do the default one, terminal. Bam. Now, one thing I noticed already, and these are things that you get used to as you work in these editors, And this is closer to what we call an IDE, an integrated development environment. But it actually opened Bash, which is pretty much the same thing that this is, but there's two of them. So we could just like get rid of the Bash and just keep that one. You'll learn what Bash is, and especially for those of you working locally. Okay, so now I've made changes to a file. I know that these changes are not out on GitHub because I can see right here, if I go in here, that's still the old content. This is the updated content. So now I'm going to do the process called the workflow. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do in my workspace in this directory. Okay. Then I'm going to type git status. Git status says, hey, you've made changes to a changes that are not staged yet. And staged just is the process of first saying, okay, here are the changes I've made to the file. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can just do git add, and matter of fact, I've noted them here. Is you can do git add star, which would add anything. Like if you've modified 4 files, it should do all of them as long as you're in the right directory. Or if you just want to do one file, you could specify the file itself. Seems like also, and might be worth trying out, you should just be able to do git add, right? So let's actually just try git add. Ah, see? Or it actually did. I was going to say, let's do git add. And you might think, I love this hint, hint, right? Git add star, actually, or git add dot. So if I do git add star, shift 8, now I didn't get a error message back, or I didn't get anything back. But now I want to do that git status again. So I'm actually going to roll. I'm using my up arrow, and I'm going to do git status. And now it says I've changes to be committed. Okay, so I did git add is the staging part. Okay, so I've now staged them. So the next thing I want to do is git commit. I want to commit them into the repo. Okay, and this repo is in the workspace at this point. So git commit -m for a message. And now this is where you'll learn as you get into the course, there are specific messages I want you to use based on what you're doing. But for today, we're just going to say updating readme.md. That's an open quote before the message, end quote at the end of the message. And you do need git space commit space -m space open quote, the message, and the end and the quote at the end. You do need all those pieces. Okay. Now, if you hit enter and you get a message, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And oftentimes, like it did up here, it actually tries to help you, which is totally cool. Now, I'm going to do a clear real quick, just to clear the terminal out, because in Git status now, what we've done, and you can see this, your branch, and these are branches that we're on. In this case, we're on the main branch. There is one commit, right? So your main branch here is ahead of the remote. And what's the remote? The thing I keep pointing to out here on GitHub. Okay. So what we've done by doing these first 3 commands is we've updated our workspace, but we have not updated GitHub, which is where you need it to be in order to submit your work. So what we need to do is this last command, which is Git Push. Okay, so let's come back over here. And this is the one that's actually going to push this new content that I placed out to GitHub. So let's do it. So Git Push. And there it goes by. This is great, even though there's a lot of content here. There's basically, it says that it took the changes, the repo that you walked through the Git commands to update, and then it pushed that out to GitHub, right? Now, how can we see it? We go over to this tab, we refresh, and then we see that content is now back. Now it is synced. It is the same as what is on our workspace. Okay. And this is the part that you've just completed your first, maybe not for some of you, but for most of you, your Git workflow that you're just going to do again and again and again for this class. Now, one last thing I want to show you that I think got turned on, but let me just see. As I was changing this file, if I go over to file, autosave it seems like it's set by default. And what that does is if I don't have autosave on, and I'm not, but what happens is I have to manually go and save the file. like this, which to me seems crazy. When you have a nice setting like this autosave, I'd rather just go to here, go to file, and then go to autosave. And what that will do is automatically save that change to me, for me. So not to me, but for me, to the local workspace. Again, not to GitHub, but just to the local workspace. It just makes my life easier. As a matter of fact, notice what it also does. It gives you a little color here to indicate there's new content in here as well. So I'm going to go over here. And the reason it's not showing up here, and the reason it's not if I do Git Status, it's like, no, everything's good. That's what this message means. And the reason is it's because it hasn't been saved. So let's go over and do autosave. I'm going to do clear again. I'm going to do, and by the way, up arrow is really helpful. Git status. Now it sees it, because until you save that content, the Git does not recognize. It's like, no, there's nothing new here. And now that you've saved it, by again making your life easier with autosave, hopefully that makes more sense. Anyway, I hope this helped. Hope this is getting closer to the point of, learning about what you need to do for this class. All right.